Discuss this now with my panel, CNN political commentator Ana Navarro. She's a Republican strategist who is not supporting Donald Trump. Former Trump campaign senior advisor Ed Brookover and Angela Rye. She's former executive director of the Congressional Black Caucus. She is supporting Hillary Clinton. Thanks to all of you, as always, for being here today.
Thank you, Jim.
So, Ed, you have Donald Trump, in addition to sort of spitting fire at some of his Republican colleagues, saying today that there is, quote, a sinister deal going on inside the Republican Party to defeat him. Is there a sinister deal? I
think he's certainly feeling frustrated by some of the comments over the past few days by some Republican leaders. But as John King's survey just said, he still has an 83-point lead among Republicans. If he improves on that number a little bit, all of a sudden we're back to a neck-and-neck race. That's the easiest people to get back. So we're in a race which has been very fluid and will continue to be.
Ana Navarro, Mr. Trump, as part of the confidence that we hear from Ed here, he's counting to, he's looking back at the Republican primaries. Look how well I did there. I can get these folks together. I can win this. Looking at the numbers now, do you believe that? Can he turn this around?
No, he can't. I think he's done. Put a fork in him, he is done. And it's all been his own doing. That being said, I think what he's doing is signaling, if I go down, I'm taking all of you with me. I am in a scorched earth mode. And I think what he's signaling to Republicans is, you all better stop coming after me. You better stop attacking me, because I am going to tell my core group of supporters, and they are loyal to him, let's make no mistake about that, not to vote for you down ballot. And I'm going to make life very, very difficult for you. So this is what you're seeing right now from Donald Trump is called hostage taking of other Republicans that are down ballot from him. And Republicans are in a very difficult situation, because on the one hand, they've got to wrestle, many of them, with their own conscience and their own principles, and on the other hand, with the political realities. It is not an easy cat to skin.
And I just, on this note, this idea that it's lost, and maybe he knows that it's lost, some of his language has struck me. He said today, whether I win, lose, or draw, he's talking about a movement as opposed to a win. Is there, in that language, do you sense him setting up his supporters for a scenario where he loses, but there's still something that he brought together and only he can lead?
Well, I think the movement chose him. He didn't choose the movement. I worked for Dr. Carson first, another outside candidate who competed with Mr. Trump. We didn't win. Came in behind Mr. Trump. And so this movement's out there. It's out there on the Republican side with Mr. Trump supporters. It was out there on the Democratic side with Bernie Sanders supporters. So this movement's going to be out there. And I think what he's signaling is that he thinks this movement deserves a voice. He's found that voice, and he's going to fight for that voice.
Angela, I want to give you a chance to why don't you go on that, and then I'm going to ask you about the WikiLeaks releases.
Sure. So a couple of things. One is, what Donald Trump is doing, I would argue, is less than leader-like. He is absolutely, feeding into this whole frenzy of not just anti-establishment politics, not just anti-elected officials, not just politics as usual frustrations, but he's also telling people that if, certain people vote or if certain things happen in certain states, then we really have an issue. This election was thrown. It was rigged. Using some of that Bernie Sanders language, not in the way in which Bernie Sanders intended. And what scares me, frankly, is who are they going to blame? I think that we find ourselves very much so back in the position of 2010 when the Tea Party rose up and talked about taking their country back. Well, who are they taking it back from? Well, we just so happened to elect our first black president. I don't like the rhetoric he's using. Again, I don't think it's leader-like. And if he wanted to be responsible for a movement, it should be a movement towards positivity, constructive change in this country, not destructing everything that we've built. That's the real problem.
And I want both you and Ed to respond to that, because this has been a repeated message of Donald Trump. He has said, if I lose, there has been cheating. It is a rigged system. Yeah. And bringing up, frankly, a possibility, because his supporters listen to him, that if the result doesn't go his way, that this anger gets channeled somewhere dangerous. How concerned are you, Ana?
Look, I think that this election has brought out the worst in us. I think that the division, the hostility, the anger, the hatred out there is something that's going to need to be addressed come November 9th. We are going to have to come to Jesus. We're going to have to sing Kumbaya, not only as a Republican Party, but as an American people. We cannot continue this dramatic polarization of the American people. I think the next 3.5 weeks are going to be extremely challenging. We are going to see a Donald Trump who at this point sees himself in a corner, has nothing to lose, thrash around like a shark with a seal in its mouth. But it's up to us to then have the healing come around after November 8th.
So the question is, what are the 3.5 weeks or more after the election? Ed, will your candidate, Donald Trump, let's say he loses
and take some medication.
It's a long way from now, but if he does, will he respect the results of the election and do so publicly?
He said he would in the last debate. He said that all along.
But he's also said, if I lose, there was cheating.
The one thing that I would agree with Anna on is that this country is frustrated, and they're beyond frustration. There is anger out there about, and Angela, that anger is directed mainly at the problems in Washington, the problems that have not been solved. And so there are every day, it surprised me to have Iowa voters, voters in New Hampshire, voters in South Carolina, small business owners out there who were frustrated because they have a government which is not keeping them safe, which doesn't have an economic future for them, and they want something done.
And I want to ask you, because feeding to this anger and this frustration in Washington are some of the emails leaked by WikiLeaks that get inside the private communications specifically of John Podesta, Clinton campaign manager. And I just want to read some of the most recent revelations from these. We have one, and we'll show this on the screen. If she thinks we can get to Labor Day without taking press questions, I think that's suicidal. Internal debate about that period of time when she was not speaking to the press. Here's another one. Dated August 21st, 2015, Podesta encouraging Clinton to connect to, quote, needy Latinos for an endorsement. Those individuals, as it turned out, were Federico Pena, former transportation secretary under Bill Clinton, and former New Mexico Governor Bill Richardson. First, I want to ask you, Angela, does that kind of communication, does that offend you?
I think it's certainly frustrating. I think the first thing we have to remember is the campaign has not confirmed the authenticity of these emails, first and foremost. We know that the Russians, if they are involved, and it looks like they might be since they're no longer denying the DNC hacks, that they have everything.
Yeah, but they also didn't deny. Listen, there were ones that were clearly false. We talked about one yesterday where Donald Trump was reading, in effect, not from an email, but from a cut and pasted Newsweek piece. But there's been no challenge to the content of these specific emails.
Sure, but they also have not acknowledged that they're their emails. But this is what I'm going to tell you regardless, Jim. I don't like the content of the emails. I would say I agree with the press issue at the time and the one now that Donald Trump is certainly embracing on his side. There was never a good strategy in keeping her away from the press. Point blank, period, full stop. She had a trustworthiness issue. She needed to be very open with the press. We've seen that strategy change. On the needy Latino issue, I have said time and time again that racism, issues with discrimination, issues with bias don't exist solely within the Republican Party or the Democratic Party or even among independents or with Gary Johnson libertarians. We have racism in this country. It is real, it is alive, and it is well, unfortunately. So we need to address it even within the Democratic Party. Not a good heading for an email if it was John Podesta. He needs to immediately address it, and maybe he needs to take implicit bias training too. They do it all over corporate America, so I don't know why we are not doing it in the party structure yet either.
Angela, thank you. Anna, and as well, thanks very much for breaking it down for us. Well,